Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Love in Reality podcast. I am your host, Ricky Valero. On today's episode, we are finally here. After 11 episodes, this is the fourth week of waiting, we have reached the Love is Blind finale, season 4. Who will say yes? Who will say no at the altar? A lot goes down today on these episodes. I remember watching them a few weeks back and thinking to myself, this is going to be talked about because there's still a lot of questions that remain unanswered. And of course, don't forget, we have the big Love is Blind live reunion show Sunday, April 16th. I cannot wait for that live at, I think it's 8 p.m. Eastern time. That's definitely going to be a lot of fun. A lot of craziness will go down. And yes, you know it, I will be covering that as well, getting your thoughts as well as mine for this year's Love is Blind live reunion. That's going to be fire-filled, right? You know what I mean? There's so much going down. You got Irina, she's surely going to come back and get a lot of heat for a lot of things that she did. You've got Jackie, Marshall. What's that going to be like on live television? That's going to be crazy. And then, of course, the aftermath of all of these weddings and kind of that where are they now type of scenario. Just because they got married, are they still together? What's married life been like, etc., etc., etc. So without further ado, let's jump right in to Love is Blind season 4, episode 12. Oh man, so last week we got the cliffhanger of Chelsea saying yes, but it was Kwame's turn to say yes, and well, Kwame says I do. I was kind of shocked by this. I didn't think that he would say yes at the altar. A lot of the funny things that I found interesting about the scenario was the dynamic between him and Chelsea all season had kind of been wishy-washy, right? But in a recent post, as of like 5 hours ago of me recording this, Kwame put all the content was taken out of our engagement when the big cameras weren't on us. We got to enjoy life and communicate in ways that we felt most natural to us. Just a quick response to everyone say they have no chemistry or they don't even love each other. Based on what you saw, I don't blame you for thinking that, but actually we had the most fun together falling in love. That's what Kwame posted just a few hours ago on his post. So it's definitely interesting to see. I even talked to him in my interview and asked him about that relation, the him saying yes, was there any hesitation? Because all of this back and forth with his mother, and he's like, it wasn't just on his mother. And I'm like, well, it looked like it. So it was kind of why I was leaning towards I wasn't sure he was going to say yes. Of course, next up, we've got Micah, we've got Paul. I was still very mixed heading onto this. Early on, it didn't seem they had great chemistry, but I feel like each episode passes, I felt like they were going to get closer and closer together. A lot happens with them and their families. I just don't, the conversations happen. The conversation Paul with his parents. Once Paul had that conversation, I felt confident in my prediction of him saying no. It just kind of felt like it was a statement of him saying, yeah, I really don't think that this is going to, it was a sign for me. Now, of course, here we go. At the altar, they asked Micah, do you say I do? But this was the biggest twist that we've had at the altar. When she sits there and says she got asked first, and she flips the script on Paul and wants Paul to answer first. And then, of course, he says, I love you, but I don't think we can choose each other right now. I think she knew deep down that he would say no, and she didn't want to be the one to say yes and get no in return. Now, in the conversations that I had with Micah, you can see these interviews up over on my YouTube page. Micah did state that it wasn't that. The reason she said no, or the reason she flipped the switch on Paul, was because she didn't want him to feel forced to say yes at the altar because she said yes. Now, then she calls him out and says she didn't feel accepted throughout this entire process and never felt that. And as Paul tries to say something, Micah stormed off. Of course, we have Micah's BFF in the background that is jumping for joy, relieved because this is how she wanted this to go down, obviously. Paul goes to try to talk to her, and she asks him to leave because it's too hurtful. He said, it's not because I don't love you. He then says it did. And then he was asking himself, did I make the wrong choice? I love you so much. And then, of course, she said, maybe you should leave. It was really crazy because I felt like this was the most emotion that we've seen from Micah all season. And again, not to say maybe there wasn't moments where we didn't see that were off camera, but you didn't really see that vulnerable side of her and this kind of emotional side of her throughout this entire show. So to see this from her was just definitely not surprising, but shocking to say the least, because we hadn't seen that all season. He said, and then of course, a little bit later, Paul said that there is love, but he didn't always feel it reciprocated. Hello. I always felt like that. I always felt that way about her, that she didn't have 100% in her. He struggled to see her as a mother, which he did say I was really blown away by. I'm sure that's going to be brought up at the reunion. That's some strong words. He said whenever he tried, he could never see it clearly. For me personally, when you get a no at the altar, I understand like you are emotionally hurt, but it doesn't make any sense to me why it has to stop here, right? We'll find out more about these relationships between the two of these people and find out if they tried again or anything like that, kind of like Shane and Natalie did. But I always hear like it has to be the end here. It doesn't. I really feel like, why is that said so much? Because you have two individuals that are grown-ass people that live in the same city-ish. Why can't they, just because they said no at the altar doesn't mean they can't give it a go elsewhere. Now, moving on to our favorite couple, Brett and Tiffany. Here we go. Tiffany said she was freaking out a little bit. She needs to trust her instincts. First off, when I heard this, right, I feel like the anticipation here, we've all wanted them to say yes this entire season. I was like, there can't be nothing that can change here, right? You know, we just love these two. You know, he said it's a unique experience, but he knows she is the one. He's ready to put a ring on her finger. He's only feared that something would happen to her, like what happened to his brother, which was gut-wrenching. You know, and then he said she made him feel like a superhero. I just love them. I just love these two. Brett's dad is here. Tiffany's mom shows up. She says she loves Brett so much. And then, of course, Tiffany's dad arrives to talk to Brett. Such a beautiful talk between these two men. I just love these families. I love the support that they've provided for these two individuals. I feel like it's something that could be learned. There's a lot of questions to be made about this short period of time, getting to know somebody. How can you get married so fast, et cetera, et cetera. But the support that Brett and Tiffany's family have shown Brett and Tiffany throughout this process is something that's been beautiful, right? You know what I mean? We do have the opposite side of Kwame and his mom and his question marks there and all that stuff, but it's definitely been something that I've pretty grasped onto, I guess you should say. Brett's suit pants don't fit and he's frustrated. It's kind of the first time we've really kind of seen him frustrated. He rushes to the tailor. The pants crisis has been fixed and we're ready to go. I was scared because I thought maybe this would be like one of those, oh no, like my pants aren't working. Maybe this is a reason why this day is not meant to be blah, blah. No, it didn't happen. Very happy about that. Yeah, I remember taking the note. For some strange reason, he said no. It would be the most devastating no in the history of this show. It really would have been. Marshmallows arrived. It's just, I love these two. A special bond. It's beautiful to watch. I remember writing a note down that said my number one couple on this show is Marshall and Brett. These just, you know, I love these two. They have a great relationship. I love what they stand for as men. And very important to watch these two individuals as they go. Brett's dad said, I got your crying towel if you need it. And here we go. Tiffany and her dad are so cute together. Before they walk the aisle, Brett sees Tiffany, starts to cry. And then her dad hands over Tiffany and he says, take care of my baby to Brett. The rain starts to pour in. Tiffany says her vows, and yes, they are beautiful. And of course, Brett spoke from the heart. Brett says, I most definitely will. And of course, Tiffany followed with, I absolutely will. And this emotional moment, I just loved it. Just the most rewarding couple on the show, this history, the history of the show. I jokingly said, but I'm serious at the same time. I really feel like in the future, these two could be the poster child of Love is Blind and how we see such a beautiful foundation. And maybe they should host the show one day. So here we go. All right. Now we are moving on to Bliss and Zach. Yeah. This one was interesting for me. He's talking about, first off, the conversation starts, we're talking with families and everything like that, obviously the build, et cetera, et cetera. And then out of nowhere, he's talking about identifying as an owl, which, whatever. His family calls him out about why he chose Arena before Bliss. He breaks down the story about how he was scared of Bliss's family. Zach's family arrives. And then, of course, he goes, Romeo and Juliet didn't end up together. I mean, this guy is full of one-liners that is just great. We didn't get the build-up or the behind-the-scenes of Bliss's family or anything like that, just her dad cracking jokes before walking down the aisle. So it's interesting to see kind of like what that dynamic was, because we really don't know. Walking down the aisle, we had Zach looked absolutely terrified, while Bliss looked like she didn't even want to be there. I don't know what it is, right? I'm very, very shocked at this dynamic, right? Zach said in his vow, the moment I realized I loved you was whenever I told you goodbye. Bliss's turn, her vows were short and sweet to the point. Zach says yes and says I do, and then Bliss says I do, which this was the only one that I got wrong. I'm still shocked by this one. I am floored that Bliss said yes. I don't want to be a negative Nancy or anything like that. I'm very, pro-positive. I hope the marriage lasts forever, but will it? I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts. Of all the couples that said yes, Bliss, Zach, Kwame and Chelsea, and then, of course, Brett and Tiffany. Who do you think is going to last? I would love to hear your thoughts and comments about this. We hear Paul talk before the show's over. Micah said she wanted Paul to say yes and hear him choose her, but he didn't. That was a nice little jab on the way out the door. Definitely interesting season. I love the season, honestly. A lot of drama, but that's expected. In these shows, you're going to find individuals that are looking for clout, looking for that kind of one-up. Like, you know what I mean? Can I use this as a platform to elevate myself in this world of influencers? And then on the other side of it, you have people that are really looking for love. You know what I mean? Like, you have to weed through that. And sometimes you're going to have a little bit of both. The live reunion is going to be really telling, because now you have the aftermath of, now that we're talking about it, you have the aftermath of Micah and Paul. What's that relationship like? What was that relationship post-altar? What is Brett and Tiffany up to now? What is Bliss and Zach up to now? Kwame and Chelsea. Like, what are these relationships like in this? You got to remember, they got married like a year ago. So what's that year been like for this couple? And yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm excited to see this live reunion, because then, of course, on the backside of that, you have the Josh, Jackie, Marshall situation. Jackie's saying that she has some ammunition she's coming with. Marshall says he's got some stuff. Will we get the ring back? What is going on? Who's doing what? What's on first? Who's on second? Type of scenario, guys. But make sure that you check out, I have released the full interviews with the cast of Love is Blind Season 4 with spoilers now. They talk about their altar decisions. I asked Kwame, I asked Paul, and then I talked to Micah. Those are the three that I asked about their decisions at the altar. So definitely interesting to see and hear them talk about what happened, what transpired, why Micah made the decision she did. Kwame's thoughts on a bit about his mom in that scenario, and Paul giving his thoughts about when he knew that decision was going to happen, of saying no at the altar. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for listening to the Love is Love and Reality, Love and Reality podcast. Let me hear your thoughts about Love is Blind Season 4. I want to hear all the juicy gossip of what you think is going to happen on the live reunion. If you have any thoughts about the show, tweet them out to me at @RickyValera_. That's where you can find me on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you guys so much for listening to the show, and we'll be back on Tuesday.